currently have 60 that I am managing myself, and a full-time mommy, and full-time realtor, and full-time property manager of my properties.
Perfect. Awesome, Swapna. So the reason why we chose Swapna and Carolyn to be on the call is because they have two completely different perspectives on investing. So Swapna, that's awesome. You've had investing over a long period of time. Your investing was prior to you getting to real estate. And Carolyn, on the flip side, tell us who you are, a little bit about how long you've been in real estate, and what's going on with you.
Sure. I'm Carolyn Bauerschlag. For those of y'all that don't know me, I've been at Keller Williams Premier for almost 6 years. I'm about a week shy of my anniversary date. I got in real estate right before oil crashed, and I've been at Keller Williams Premier the whole time. I joined MAPS Coaching a few years ago and have endeavored to build wealth through real estate. I was largely building real estate wealth for other people. So I was helping investor clients do a lot of their own investments. And through MAPS Coaching and some programs that I took and Coaching Skills Camp and like really diving deep into what your long-term goals are, I realized that I had probably my own limiting beliefs that were preventing me from feeling confident enough to do it myself. So I worked through that, and we now own 2 investment properties, one of which was our former primary residence, and the other is a cash flowing townhome that we purchased last fall. So we're at 3 properties owned and 2 that are cash flowing. So nowhere close to 100 doors
yet.
Well,
so perfect, Carolyn. Let's stay on that with you first, and let's dive into the first question that we have here today. So you said your first investment property was your primary residence that now is a cash flowing property for you. So explain to people kind of how you guys did that.
So it actually came about backwards. We, in July, we said, okay, we're committed to purchasing an investment property. And I had transacted in a couple of communities, or in a community that I really liked the way that the numbers looked. So I said, okay, well, the next one that pops up in that community, we'll go ahead and we'll go for it. I thought that we had maybe 3 to 6 months before that came up, and it actually wound up being about 3 weeks before it came up. So we got tested pretty quickly on that. So we purchased that townhome first. So we closed on that townhome in September, and then we had zero intention of transacting in real estate again, but our something that really fit a lot of the criteria for us for a primary residence popped up for sale, and we really felt compelled to move on it. I was really struggling with the idea of letting go of our previous primary residence because of the way that we had cared for it, the way that we had just dropped a new AC and carpet and paint into the home, and I just felt really, really very conflicted about it. So we ran the numbers, and the cash flows on our primary residence, our previous primary residence, were better than what we could shop on the open market. So that just really helped me and my husband feel confident in keeping that property. Because if we had liquidated it, the question would have been, what would we reinvest that money into, right? So an emotional pull wound up actually being the reason that we held on to our old primary residence and turned it into cash flow.
Awesome. And just to let everybody know, if you don't mind sharing, what about price points are the 2 properties that you
have? The one that we bought last fall, the townhome, we purchased it for $172. The transaction price on that now, fair market value, is probably around $187, $186. And then our old residence was purchased in 2013 for $225. And that one's probably worth today about $285, $290.
Perfect. And how did you fund those purchases?
Both of those were with 20% down.
Perfect.
And
awesome.
So we financed both. So we carry 3 mortgages right now.
Okay, perfect. But 2 of them, do other people pay for you?
Yes. The two properties that are positively cash flowing, of course, their monthly rent covers our principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And then of course there's a monthly profit on that as well.
Perfect. Awesome. Anything else you want to share before we go to Swapna?
No, that's it.
Perfect. So Swapna, I know you got to go way back, like over a decade ago to what your first investment property was, but how did you get into investing?
So, my original life, I was an IT consultant traveling around the country, and then I had 2 kids, and my husband also travels for work, so I couldn't do that anymore. But being home and listening to Twinkle Twinkle for the 80 millionth time was not going to work. I'd always had an interest in real estate, always had been taught from a young age about investing in the stock market, but really not in real estate. I was very lucky in that we have I don't want to say super close friend. It was kind of an acquaintance. We're close friends with this person's brother-in-law, and he's all into construction, and he's a general contractor, and he hates computers and paper, and I can barely tell the difference between a screwdriver and a wrench. And we were like, well, this could work, so we actually were very careful about setting up a partnership, and we said, let's go out and do something. It was literally that general. Let's do something in real estate. And our problem is nobody wanted, and because he's a general contractor, one of our biggest things that we were looking is to get that equity day one. So he can build it so much cheaper than we can buy it. So your day one, your property's worth 130,000, but it only costs us 100 to build. Okay. But nobody would give us a loan. So we were really struggling, and we ended up cash flowing 100% our first 2 homes, single family homes, which was very scary to throw down, $100,000 cash on one thing where you don't even know what's going to happen. But they rented extremely quickly, and I'm still struggling. Back then, it was like mushrooms, right? There was apartment buildings coming up every which way, and you're like, how are they getting money? And so I was really calling every single bank, every single credit union. And it actually turned out one banker referred me to another banker who referred me to another banker who gave us a construction loan if we had a multifamily. Well, that was scary. How big a multifamily? We don't know if the area we're buying in is going to be able to support a multifamily. So we said, well, what constitutes a multifamily? 4 doors or more is what we were told by this banker. So we built a little townhouse building with 4 units, and we put down again 20%, which I highly recommend you do. And we built brand new townhomes, and we didn't even know how much to rent them for. There's nothing even comparable within 10 miles of this property. I'm not kidding you. We were really cool in that the property we found, my business partner already owned homes in that neighborhood. So we know the flood, we know everything that was going on. No HOA, so no building restrictions. It is Galveston County. So we did have to go and figure out what kind of detention and stuff that they would have. But we were able to learn a lot from those 4. So we rented them out for $800 because we didn't know what else to rent it for. So we just picked a number out of the hat. Well, they rented within minutes, right? And the minute you could rent those, the bank said, okay, now we can approve you for a second one, which we'd already purchased the land when we built the first 2 houses. So we were like, cool, as long as that's rented, we can start the next project. Those we learned very quickly actually rent for $1,150 to $1,200 each. And they cost, back when we first built them, they cost about $85,000 to build each unit. So we ended up then taking that model and multiplying it. So we have a ton of these townhomes that we've built in this neighborhood to rent out. We've been able to work we have one tenant who's been with us almost from the beginning, and she's almost paid off her unit in full for us.
Wow.
I think she's paid us because she started back at $900 or so in rent, and we haven't raised her that much to where it is currently, but I think she's at $66,000 on our, what cost us $85,000 to build. And she's about to sign a new lease this week. So by the time next week, she'll have paid off our entire unit for free.
Wow, that's phenomenal. So thank you both for sharing that. So I just want to recap, because the purpose of this panel today is to show you guys that it's not a one size fits all way to do investing, right? So Carolyn and Swapna, 2 different people who Carolyn invested with her husband, and they did this as personal transactions, right? And Swapna found a business partner and went and hunted down every single bank imaginable. But one key thing that they both said was they put 20% down and that they saved that money to get the 20% down. So do either of you want to tell the agents why it's important to hit that 20% mark?
It's a
Um,
requirement if you're utilizing Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans. So if you're not going the route of hard money and you're going to utilize what's considered a traditional mortgage, your minimum skin in the game is going to be 20%. So sometimes there's interest rate drops around 25%. So that's just something that you have to look at. If you're going to do hard money conversion, you could do like if there's a distressed property, you can utilize hard money, which is usually at an 8 to 10, 11% interest, and then do what's called the conversion part after the property is rehabbed. But in order to convert it, you are generally required to, at that point, have 20 to 25% equity in the game. So either way, those are kind of your magic numbers.
Perfect. Awesome. Swapna, did you want to add anything as well?
On the construction side, we actually put down 25 to 30% is the requirement. For me, there was 2 benefits this year that I didn't even realize I had in doing it this way. One was because it is personally backed loans. If we have to evict, the tenants cannot put in the COVID paperwork to where we cannot evict them. We can still evict them because we are not federally backed. The second thing is, I will tell you, you can ask Christy Bolin, my team lead. I totally freaked out in April when the moratorium on evictions came out. I was like, holy crap, of my tenants, I was expecting 50% to not pay the rent. But I actually only need 40% to pay for me to break even and be getting my loans paid. Didn't realize how good and how safe I would feel till that actually happened in April.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So we have another, before we go to the next question, we have a question in the chat bar that I think is important. It says that for your investment property, do you have it in an LLC? This person's trying to refinance, or do you have it in your personal names?
Ours are in our personal names. I just dropped a comment in the chat box. The lender's perspective tends to be that they're lending to an individual, not to the LLC. Your LLC would have to show income, assets, operations, all of that, and you might skew into needing like a commercial loan or some kind of trade line like that. So if you're trying to refi into an LLC, you probably are going to have issues because that does not conform with the conforming standards of a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac guideline. We've consulted with insurance attorneys, real estate attorneys, peers in the industry, title agents, and the consensus was to really consider a large umbrella policy. So we carry an umbrella insurance policy for our properties.
Perfect. Thank you, Carolyn. Swapna, did you want to add anything to that?
I actually have, I think latest count was 8 LLCs. For my properties. The reason being is liability, but we do also, even with the LLCs for liability, we also carry umbrella insurance, way too litigious a society we have today. But the benefit for us with the LLCs, we do have multiple partners in our groups. So we needed to keep some cleanliness in there, the tax benefits. And because we were construction loans, that also was able to work out for us. Absolutely, it was very difficult to get those first few loans because you don't have 2 years of tax returns. So to back up slightly from this, the reason I got into real estate actually was about 3-4 years ago. I had a lot of friends come to me and say, hey, you're doing this, teach me how. And I would show them and they weren't able to get loans. So what they were doing is they would do it personally, but then they would rent the properties on their LLC name. And then after they had 2 years of tax returns, banks would now loan them to purchase homes under their LLC once you've got 2 years in.
So perfect. So what benefit did it provide for you to getting licensed? Was it because you were able to earn some commission off of helping people?
Instead of giving other people commissions, and I was helping people find homes and evaluate them, and then I would just turn them over to somebody to do the transaction. So why not just make money off of it?
Perfect. Awesome. So Swapna, we're going to go over to question 2. So what is the biggest challenge that you face in owning investment properties?
I think it's self-imposed in my situation. I do not use a property manager. I'm my own property manager. The savings are huge. I don't pay realtor fees. I don't do any of that. I post my properties because they're lower end as far as price point. They're $11.50 a month on rent. I put them on Facebook. I put them on Zillow, and you know, the maintenance when somebody calls, literally 60 doors, it's me picking up the phone. If you know the neighbor's making noise, the toilet's stopped up, whatever. My business partner is the one I call. Hey, send the maintenance guy over. If an eviction has to be filed, we physically go and we file it. We don't have anybody else. So it takes some time. You have to be available. So that's self-imposed.
Perfect. And remember, agents on this call, so you're able to do that because you own the properties, but you cannot property manage for somebody else unless you have a broker's license. So make sure if this is something you're looking into and you're doing it for other people, make sure that you're get with your broker or team leader before, if you need any questions on that. Thank you for sharing, Swapna. So Carolyn, on the flip side with you, you have a couple of properties. So tell us, what is the biggest challenge? And you're newer into this, right? You're less than a couple of years. And what is the biggest challenge you have as a new person getting in investing?
I think it's just there's a get to know your tenant period. That can be a little bit hard. So on both people that we put into the townhome, I would say there was like a false start period of about 10 days where they would complain about stuff, or they'd give you inventory and condition, and they'd be kind of fussy, or you know, you got to really screen pretty hard for making sure that what's being represented to you is actually accurate. And just basically setting the ground rules for how things are going to roll, right? So you want to be agreeable and amenable and helpful, but you also want to uphold that lease every single time. So if they're going to be late, charge them a late fee. If they have a tenant in that property that you did not approve, let them know that you know, right? So I think it's just really making sure that there are rules that you all agreed to, and that when those rules are broken, there are consequences for breaking those rules. So we had a couple of incidents with both tenants the first week and a half, 2 weeks that they were in. They were minor, and we addressed it head on, and it's been smooth sailing ever since.
Perfect. Awesome. So any other challenges or any other thing you want to share with the agents before we go to the third question?
Just to add on to what Carolyn said, yeah, you have to set those ground rules day one. You know, I mentioned, you know, when the moratorium came through on evictions, I had only 2 tenants that had issues, and they both went on payment plans and paid their money, you know, within 2 months, and they've re-signed. So it's not about being mean and, you know, kicking them out and things like that, but they knew the rules. People paid. If they couldn't pay, they asked to get out of their lease, and we let them out. And the people that wanted to stay on, we were willing to work with them, but they knew we weren't going to mess around, that once June 1st came around and we could evict them, we were going to, and that, you know, they can't play with us. We're not that soft.
And I think, like, for our purposes, you know, I had done this, I had helped other investors build their wealth. I think individually we had done 30 different homes that I had helped people buy. And then I turn around and I lease them for people. And I had done that over a period of 5 years, right? So I've used my smart move. I've seen fraudulent credit reports. I've seen fraudulent lease applications. I've seen falsifications of who is going to move into the home. Like I feel like I've seen it all. I've gotten applications from 2 different agents for the same people for 2 totally different sets of facts. I've seen fabricated pay stubs. I've seen people that drew up their own employment letters on Word docs. Like, if you can think of it, it's out there, and I've seen it, right? And so we took a very, very conservative approach to how we screen the tenants. And by that, I mean, we might've ducked the price on what we could have gotten for lease applications. So like we marketed it, let's say, for $1,575 instead of marketing it for $1,600, because I knew that I wanted to at least be able to look at a broad swath of applicants and make sure that, you know, we had credit that was at least somewhat reasonable, right? So I'm looking for patterns of behavior. I'm not looking for whether or not your credit score is good. I'm looking for are you establishing that you're either in the habit of making your payments on time or are you not? If you are unable to hold on to a job for a long period of time, I'm looking for habits on, are you consistent in what you're doing or are you not? When you're looking at the criminal records, you're not just supposed to reject people if there is a criminal record, you're looking for habits or patterns of behavior. So, I've seen people that have been jailed twice for felony arrests on stealing money. That's going to be a hard no, right? Whereas if someone's got like a minor in possession or a possession charge from 15, 16 years ago, or they've got an MIP, or they've got a DWI, that's very different than someone who's establishing that they've got a pattern of behavior that could be to the detriment of the landlord. So, it's not that we took a lazy approach at all to screening who's coming through. You have to understand that people are looking for a place to live. If they're renting, it is sometimes that they are transient, like they're in between places, but it might also be that they have a little bit of a harder life circumstance than you might be able to relate to personally. So you have to put your own biases aside, but then still make sure that you're protecting your own interests going forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, so we're going to get into the third question. And then I see we have a wonderful lender on the phone, on the call today. So we might have to ask some questions of her too. But the final question will go to Carolyn first, and then we'll end with Swapna. Is what advice would you give someone who's wanting to purchase their first investment property?
I would say definitely do it. I would say go in it with eyes wide open. Go in it with a cash backup. You need to account for vacancy, taxes, insurance. I would say in the state of Texas, you probably don't need to be considering positive monthly cash flow as the number one reason to do it or not. Meaning, don't look at something that has a $250 monthly margin and rule that out as a reason to not invest. Your margins in Texas are going to generally be more narrow because of property taxes, right? So we view the positive cash flow off of our townhomes monthly as simply the money that we will probably need to reinvest in the property for upkeep, maintenance, improvement, and all that kind of stuff. For us, this is a long-term game. And I would say that if you're looking to get into real estate investment for the purpose of holding and leasing in the short term, this is probably a mistake. So I would say your horizon or your expectation for hanging on to that property probably needs to be about 8 to 10 years at a minimum, right? And you might have heard people say this before. The best time to sell a great asset is approximately never. So I would strongly consider you investigate the probability of hanging on to the property for a very long time. Yeah, I would say that's the best advice. You need to have cash backup for not if, but when things go wrong. You need to recognize that real estate is an asset that costs you money, whether you live in it or you do not, right? So it's not a 401k where you can invest into an asset class and just let the dividends pay you. Like, that's not how this is going to work. Your landscaping needs attention. Someone's going to run over and break your sprinkler head. You may have plumbing problems. You have to take care of these properties. So, I think that perspective will help people get over the fear of moving forward.
Thank you. And Carolyn, I remember, and tell me if I'm remembering this correctly, is part of your rent, do you take care of the landscaping and certain other things to make sure the property is kept up?
Yeah, so it's kind of it's up to the landlord's choice. And I'll tell you that from observation, my landlords that have chosen to take care of their yards at their own expense have been better off in the long haul. So what you are saving in $600 to $800 a year and paying for it, you are absolutely losing if that tenant vacates the property and you got to pay a yard crew to fix it all up. So it might be $1,000, it might be $1,200, but more to the point, if they turn off that watering schedule, if you have a sprinkler system and they're not watering your lawn, your slab could crack. This is Texas, right? So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I'm very okay with writing into the lease and special provisions that the tenant is to leave the sprinkler system watering schedule on as programmed, that they agree to that in the lease. So that's written into the special provisions of our townhomes and for the investors that I work with that have sprinkler systems and choose to take on yard care. I checked the box in the lease that says that the yard will be maintained at the landlord's expense. I've just seen it. where someone vacates after 2 or 3 years, and it is a more expensive problem than it would have been probably for them to care for the lawn over the long haul.
Perfect. Is there anything else outside of the lawn that you feel they should know about that they might look into taking care of themselves?
So things that we've kind of learned along the way, we usually encourage landlords to get a home warranty on the property, and to write into the lease that the tenant is responsible for paying the trip charge for the home warranty, to pay for any warranted items. I did have a plumbing problem that was pretty significant in my townhome. That was probably exacerbated by the tenant, but maybe not caused by the tenant. So in leases going forward, it said that the improper disposal of X, Y, and Z down bathtubs, toilets, sinks, anything would result in those things being payable by the tenant. Whether or not that's enforceable would probably have to go to an attorney, but at least you're setting the stage for some ground rules. So I would say you are at your own liberty to write into that special provision how you want to handle trip charges, but the idea is that you don't want them calling you every single time the toilet has an issue because they did it, or that they're shoving bacon fat down your kitchen sink and your kitchen's backing up and you have a $200 plumbing bill, right? The idea is to look for ways to protect yourself against people living hard in the property.
Perfect. Thank you. And Swapna, what advice would you give someone who's wanting to purchase their first investment property?
Everything Carolyn said. Work your spreadsheet. There's a lot of them out there. I think Brian Vardell put one out there on the forum a while back. Analyze your properties to understand what expenses could come in, plan for those expenses, understand, are you going into this for an equity, what kind of cash flow you need, things like that. I've been kind of creative in purchasing some of my properties. Yes, the majority of mine are new builds, but I accidentally bought property on auction.com. My business partner was actually out of the country. I saw property in this neighborhood we always like to buy in, sent the handyman to take measurements and just give us what do you think? And he's like 75 years old, half blind, sweetest man ever. But he says, well, it doesn't look like it's 150 by 100 lot. Well, okay, but how does the house look? It looks okay. So I'm like, okay, let's just buy it at land value. Yeah, it turns out it's 2 houses. We had to put $80,000 into it, but we are making, the total investment was $150,000 and we're making over $2,500 in rent on both of them. So be creative in finding your properties, and know your expenses. For me, it's a little bit different than like Carolyn said with the expenses for the toilets and stuff like that. I'm able to take care of those pretty cheaply because of my business partner. So though you have to understand what is, do you have that in your pocket or not? And so how is that going to affect, your cash flow? So that would be one of my biggest things is understand your numbers, work your spreadsheet.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you guys. So Hannah, I see that you're on the call and I know that you guys teach a really good class. So tell them who you are and what advice would you give from the lender side for an agent wanting to purchase an investment property?
So actually it's me and Alicia on. We both work with AMP Lending. We are your local lender and we're also in the KW office. If y'all haven't met us or stopped by or seen us, any of those things, we are there and we're looking to see y'all. But I think one of the most important things that our investors come to us and they ask us, what do I need to do? How do I set myself up for this? And I think the most important thing is really being liquid solvent. You need to have that money up front. You're not using this house to gain the money. The money needs to be there to make it a deal for you. Don't buy the house with the last couple $1,000s you have. You need to be prepared for, like Carolyn said, for things to go wrong, for the house to need updates. You would maintain the property just like you would maintain your personal home. So the biggest thing for us is make sure you have that money up front and you're not setting yourself up for failure 8-10 years down the road, or whenever large things happen that you need to address, ACs, roof, you know, foundation, that sort of things. Those are responsibilities of yours and not the renter that's in the property. So you need to be able to plan for those things, to be able to not break the bank when those things happen. But I think that's one of the bigger things for us when we have that conversation with people. Alicia, do you have anything additional?
Yes, yeah, you really touched on the big part is being that cash solvent going into it. The class that Mary is referring to is we have a class called 10 Properties in 10 Months. The reason that we structure it that way is because there are certain guidelines and tools that we can definitely work through our advantage if you're purchasing that many properties within one taxable year, not a calendar year, but before you file next year's taxes. And we say 10 properties because that's the max amount of loans that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will have a single lender loaned against. Is going to be 10, and that would include your primary residence. One of the things AMP is we are very heavy in investor business. I would say we probably do half, if not more, of our business with investors. And so depending on how deeply you or your clients are trying to get in the investment world, meaning is it 2 properties, is it 6, is it 10, is it 20? We are that education piece for your buyers. And again, because we are so deep in investments, we know how to start them out on their first and second investment properties, because not everyone is necessarily thinking they're going to buy 20. But if they're at a place that they can, setting them up for success with homes 1, 2, and 3 is definitely going to get them to 10 and 20, which again, as long as we're coming from a place of contribution, y'all are all very educated, and Carolyn and Sapna have really great job of educating, giving you other education pieces to come to your investors with. But when you're coming with a lender partner that is also very educated, that has that piece that's telling them why they're doing this and why this is important, it really just adds more value to the job that you are giving to your clients as well.
Perfect.
And I think one of the things that we tell a lot of people is have a good team behind you. I think it's really important in your real estate business on the day-to-day, helping people buy their primary homes. And I think it's even more so important when you're talking about finding an investment property and having someone live there. You need to know who you're going to call when your roof has an issue. You need to know who you're going to call if there are repairs that need to be made. The home warranty is a wonderful idea, but who else can you talk to? You know, have your contractors, have your lender that understands the specific investment piece of buying a real estate, because it is much different than purchasing your primary residence. So make sure you have your lenders, your title people who are really great at handling investment properties and how to work through all of those REOs. So have a good team behind you. And if you don't know who, ask a lot of these people on this panel. I'm sure that they can give you that answer.
Perfect. Thank you. And I want to address a couple of questions. So we have some great answers in the chat, but because we're recording this, I want to make sure people watching it later get the same answers. So the question was, how much cash reserves should you have? And the answer was a minimum of 6 months cash reserve for your property. And then 20 to 25% down. I think Swapna even said as much as 30%. So, you know, make sure that you have that cash available as well. Yes, I think those are the couple of big things from the chat bar right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up for you guys on the call to either type in the chat bar some more questions or unmute, introduce yourself and ask a question either to one of our 2 wonderful panelists or our awesome lender partners who have jumped on the call. So that way we can hopefully get you guys started on your investing. Who has a question?
So while folks are thinking of questions, I just wanted to let y'all know, not to advertise my team or anything, but Christy does a once a month seminar where we talk to clients, and you're welcome to join, bring your clients, whatever y'all want to do. There's one next week where we have a 2-hour session online, free, obviously. The first half is why to invest in real estate and how it can build your wealth. And in that is, what is your motivation? Again, we talked a little bit about equity build versus cash flow. Even within my clients, I have some clients who, they literally buy homes that like they would live in, which even though they're not getting good rent per rate of return. I have others that their foundation had 7 inches of difference from the front of the house and the back of the house, because they're willing to put in the work to get it fixed and get the equity in that house. So each of your clients is going to be a little bit different. So this is a good way to help them understand where in that gradation they fall. And then the second half of the class is, you need to build your team, just like Hannah said. Who needs to be in your team? Lenders, agents, but you need a roofer, you need all these other people, you need insurance agents, people you didn't even think that you would need. We'll talk about in that session. And then again, how to analyze each of your properties based on what you learned in the first half. If you're an equity person, these are the numbers you need to. What is cash on cash? What is ROI? What do you need to feel comfortable with the investment, and to show you how to work through that. So just putting that out there.
Perfect. So how would they contact you to get that information on how?
You can message me and I can send you the link. And I can actually put the link here in the chat room if anyone is interested. You just register, you and your clients or whoever, and we'd be happy to have you.
Perfect. Awesome. So does anybody have a question?
Huh?
Did anybody have a question for our wonderful panelists? So if you guys are looking for some resources to figure out some reading materials outside of the panel, first of all, I would highly suggest you become friends with people like Carolyn and Swapna, lenders like Hannah and Alicia who are doing this, right? Because you don't want to be the smartest person in the room when you're learning something new. So if this is something you really want to do, meet people and mastermind with people who are already farther ahead along in the process with you, because there's going to be things that come up that you would have never thought of. So thank you for bringing that up, Swapna. And then I always want to remind everybody there's 2 wonderful books that Gary Keller wrote. The MREI, the blue book right here, which is the Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Gary said that this is the biggest disappointment in his career, is that the MREI does not sell as many copies as the MREA. Because he said every real estate agent is the first opportunity to be an investor in the properties they see. And then the second one, we talked earlier about, do you want to keep a property for a short period of time or hold it? We also do have the hold book, which talks about investing properties that you're going to hold over periods of time. So Swapna and Carolyn, do you have any other resources or books that you would advise agents to get into if they're thinking about starting their own investments?
The hold book is there, and then there's the flip book.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the flip book is also very good. Personally, I don't have the stomach for flipping. I've done it a couple of times. It has not gone well for me. I haven't lost. I always say any loss is still educational expense. So it's okay. It's a learning experience. Nothing has killed me. But it is not my favorite thing to do. In the Houston market specifically, it's very hard to time the market, but that is also a good resource.
Perfect, thank you. Carolyn, any other resources?
I listen to webinars. So I subscribe to, I guess it's a podcast. I subscribe to Bigger Pockets. I've enjoyed listening to these folks. It's I don't know if it's weekly, but there's an episode about once a week where these 2 hosts interview people that have invested across the country. And I think hearing different narratives from folks that say stories similar to our own origin stories, is that they just got started. They just started with one, is helpful, because it takes you and it puts you into their shoes, and it feels a little bit less like, you have to be some master of spreadsheets and you have to be wildly experienced in real estate in order to be successful. So I think it really just chunks it down so that it feels a lot more accessible. So Bigger Pockets is a really good one. And then I honestly have created a network with the people that I've helped build wealth through real estate. So when I've gone through struggles myself as the landlord, I've straight up called them and I've said, how did you deal with this? Because I market the property for lease. I get their tenant in there. I make sure that those rents are being paid for the first month or two. I check in on them and then I'm done. Right. And so I don't necessarily hear the stories on the back end. And so I think really creating a community of people through your real estate network is extraordinarily valuable so that you can mastermind with people who are in it with you. I would say that as an agent, once I started investing, I felt like I kind of earned my stripes a little bit. Like I could speak from a place where I could say, hey, let me take my realtor hat off for a minute and let me empathize with you as an investor. And I've actually said that to folks before. I've said to them, if you don't buy this and I had the money available, I would do it right now. I would buy this house. So either you're writing an offer, I'm writing an offer. And that's not to compel a sale, but to really say like, I would put my money literally where my mouth is and pursue this kind of property. And so I think if you're considering it, I would say what Mary touched on earlier and what Gary said before and what Wendy Papasan has said, if you've been on her webinars, is that every great deal and opportunity for real estate probably passes through your hands first before it ends up on your client's plate. And in fact, that was part of what got us to buying that first townhome. Is that I transacted in that community in January. And then I turned around and I helped someone buy in that community that I had met at an open house through my listing. And then I kind of kept my eye on it for a couple other investors. And I kept passing these listings out to people saying, buy it. They wouldn't buy. And I was like, this is stupid. And then I was like, oh, wait, I could buy it. Right. And so it was kind of that moment where it's like, okay, every deal does pass through my hands before we pass it on to somebody else. So put yourself in the driver's seat and give yourself the opportunity to win and earn the way that your clients do.
Perfect. Awesome. So final thoughts to wrap up the call.
I just answered some questions for Dean as to what are my next steps. I'm trying to basically, and guys, I know 60 sounds like a lot. If you would ask me 10 years ago if I ever thought I'd own more than 5, I would have said, are you kidding me? There's no way. Where the heck am I going to find the money? How am I going to do this? It happens a lot faster, and it is, if you find the right properties, it's very repeatable. And you'll learn a lot from each one and you'll get more and more comfortable with each one. I'm trying to get my townhomes portfolio to 50 so then I can eventually sell it as a portfolio to a hedge fund. But I'm getting a little tired of dealing with my neighbors yelling and my toilets overflowed and, all of that craziness. So my goal is in the next 5, not even 5 years, without sharing my age, I did have a goal by a certain age to be starting into commercial. So that is now my new goal. I do have property, land I've purchased, and we're looking to do commercial condos. So those little house looking like ones that have your dentist or your mortgage broker or whoever in there. Build 5, keep 2, sell 3, rent out the 2. That's the next frontier we're about to tackle.
Awesome. Thank you. Carolyn, any final words?
I would say go at your own pace. It takes everybody time to get used to their risk, right? So if you're interested or you're starting out, everything works differently for people who are involved in these decisions. So start with one, see how it feels. Don't let the experience deter you. If your first 2 weeks with your tenant are hard, that's normal. Don't let it deter you from continuing on the path. Build a network, chat with people. Like there are plenty of people that are doing this. And I think it's single most powerful thing in growing your net wealth, right? So we chat a lot about net wealth opportunities. I lead a mastermind for agents across Houston, or really across KWYP in Houston and the MAPS network. I lead a mastermind around profitability for yourself as an agent, right? And investing in real estate is a huge part of that. Investing in your SEP IRA is another huge part of that. once you have exhausted the tax benefit or tax deferred accounts that you have available to you through the federal government, like a Roth IRA or a 401k or a SEP IRA, real estate to me is the next and most natural choice. So buy the thing that you transact in daily, and I think you'll be happy with yourself.
Perfect. And Carol, thank you for sharing. Carolyn, if they wanted to watch your mastermind, how would they connect with them?
So it's a Facebook group called CB's Profit Mastermind, Get Real, Get Right in Business and Personal Finance. I guess I can just drop the link really quickly in there into the chat box. But you know, the single biggest thing that stood out to me as a real estate agent is that you have probably the best chance at building your own net wealth long term as a sole proprietor. And I think people feel like when they go into real estate, you're losing out on the opportunity to have a 401k or all of those corporate sort of niceties. And in reality, there are so many other things that are available to you through that space. So through entrepreneurship. So that's what the mastermind's really for.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you, Swapna. Thank you, Carolyn, for being on our panel today. Thank you, Hannah and Alicia, for our surprise drop-in. Hopefully everyone got some great information. We're going to post the video on our YouTube page and on Facebook later. Carolyn has the link in their Facebook groups. So thank you guys again, and good luck in investing.